بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. Today we are going to speak about one of the pillars of Islam, which is fasting. It's going to be, you can call it as a crash course about fasting. So it's going to cover all things related to fasting, from the definition until everything related to Kaffarah and Fidyah. So we start with defining fasting. So fasting is abstaining during the day from what invalidates fasting with intention from the sunrise to sunset, abstaining from stomach and sexual desire and from any physical thing that enters the body. So when we say abstaining during the day meaning from sunrise to sunset, and what invalidates fasting, meaning that whatever factors that invalidate, which we are going to discuss, we need to abstain from them with intention, meaning that if there is no intention, then there is another ruling for that. So we speak about stomach and sexual desire and any physical thing or object that can enter the body. So the pillars of fasting is the intention and the abstaining of the desires of the stomach and the sexual desires. So these are the two pillars. Some of the scholars, they say only it's one pillar, which is abstaining from anything that breaks the fast, but all the scholars, they agree that intention is part of the fasting, whether it's a pillar or whether it's a condition for the fasting. The time is from the sunrise to sunset for the normal countries. Some countries that are to the north, they might have 10 hours of day or 10 hours of night. So it's not going to be realistic for them to actually fast for 20 hours or more. So the difference between some of the Iceland, for example, in the North Iceland, in the summer, they might have the day is around 20 to 22 hours. So meaning that the time between Maghrib and Fajr is only 3 hours or 4 hours. So that's going to be hard for them to fast. That's why for these countries, the scholars said that either they follow the closest country, which is normal in timing, and they use the time for the fasting, or they follow Mecca. For example, Mecca, the Maghrib time is at 7 o'clock, the Fajr time is at 7 a.m., so they follow these 7 to 7 fasting. So they don't follow actually the sun in these cases. Narrated by Aisha, Bilal used to pronounce the adhan at night. So Allah's apostle said, carry on taking your meals, eat and drink, till Ibn Maktoum pronounces the adhan, for he does not pronounce it till it is dawn. So here we spoke previously about the difference between the true dawn and the false dawn. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there used to be two adhans. So Bilal used to make the adhan of the first, which is nowadays we call it imsak. So you can still eat and drink, as the Prophet ﷺ said, after the imsak or the adhan of imsak, until Ibn Maktoum. Ibn Maktoum, which is the other mu'adhin for the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make adhan at the time of Fajr exactly. So that's when we don't stop our fasting or our eating at the imsak adhan, but rather we stop our eating at the Fajr adhan. So the Fajr adhan is our criteria, and that's what the Prophet ﷺ said. So before you came, we said that today is a crash course about fasting, so we'll cover all the aspects of fasting, inshallah. About fasting, the door of Rayyan, we know that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that there is a gate, as he said, there is a gate in paradise called Rayyan, and those who observe fasts will enter through it on the day of resurrection, and none except them will enter through it. It will be said, where are those who used to observe fasts? They will get up, and none except them will enter through it. After their entry, the gate will be closed, and nobody will enter through it. So that's the door of Rayyan, which is the specialized door for those who are doing or fasting. Taqwa, the Prophet Allah Azza wa Jal said in the Quran that the fasting has been revealed to you and made obligation to you as the previous nations to increase your taqwa or piety. And the reason behind the fasting is to increase our piety. And the scholars discussed why is it to increase the piety, because during fasting nobody knows whether we are fasting or not except Allah Azza wa Jal, so that enhances our taqwa. Fighting oneself, so we fight our desires. Patience, and it will help us in increasing our patience. Trustworthiness, as we said that nobody will know about us except Allah Azza wa Jal. Discipline, we teach ourselves to be disciplined with timing and so on. Mercy and feeling with poor people, all of these are wisdoms for fasting. Narrated by Abu Hurairah, Allah's Apostle said, when the month of Ramadan starts, the gates of heaven are opened and the gates of hell are closed and the devils are chained. So this is a good opportunity for everyone. Narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever established prayers on the night of Al-Qadr out of sincere faith and hoping for a reward from Allah, then all his previous sins will be forgiven. And whoever fasts in the month of Ramadan out of sincere faith and hoping of a reward from Allah, then all his previous sins will be forgiven. So it's a season of forgiveness from whether we are praying in the night, Taraweeh, or we are fasting. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet ﷺ was the most generous amongst the people, and he used to be more so in the month of Ramadan, when Jibreel used to visit him, and Jibreel used to meet with him on every night of Ramadan till the end of the month. The Prophet ﷺ used to recite the Holy Quran to Jibreel, and then when Jibreel met him, he used to be more generous than a fast wind. So that's all to encourage Quran and donation and being generous during the month of Ramadan. Narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah said, all the deeds of Adam's son, people, are for them except fasting, which is for me, and I will give the reward for it. Fasting is a shield or protection from the fire and from committing sin. So if one of you is fasting, he should avoid sexual relation with his wife and quarreling. And if somebody should fight or quarrel with him, he should say, I'm fasting. By him in whose hands my soul is, the unpleasant smell coming out from the mouth of a fasting person is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk. There are two pleasures for the fasting person, one at the time of breaking his fast, and the other at the time when he meets his Lord, then he will be pleased because of his fasting. All of these are hadith that speak about the benefit of fasting and the reward of fasting. Night of Al-Qadr, we know that the night of Al-Qadr is in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, and as the Prophet ﷺ said, look for it in the last odd 10 nights of Ramadan. The wisdom behind hiding it, the Prophet ﷺ was coming out to inform the Muslims about when is the night of Al-Qadr, and he met two people that were quarreling and were arguing, and the Prophet ﷺ came and he said, I was about to tell you when is the night of Al-Qadr, but I was made for getting it. It's better for you. Look for it in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, or in the last 5 odd nights of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So there is a wisdom behind it that's going to enhance the people's effort. What is the best thing to say in the night of Al-Qadr? Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'afu anna. Signs of the night of Al-Qadr, there are lots of hadith, but most of them are weak hadith. How do I know the Laylatul Qadr? When was it? But the most authentic is that in Sahih Muslim, the sun of the next day is weak without radiation. That's the sign. The most, you will hear lots of people speaking about dogs not barking, donkeys are not sounding, and so on. All of these are not authentic hadith. The authentic hadith about it is it's a night when the sun rises, it's going to be without radiation. It's like orange and I've seen it in my life lots of times, and it was not in specific day in the last 10 of Ramadan. I saw it on the 25th, I saw it on the 23rd, and sometimes it was on the 27th. So the scholars differed whether the night of Al-Qadr is actually a specific night or it's moving. Majority said that it is moving between the nights. Okay. Fasting is obligation in the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the Quran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam, or you who believe it has been written on you to fast. The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the Prophet ﷺ said about the pillars of Islam, including fasting of Ramadan. It was made obligation on the 10th of Sha'ban on the second year of migration. Okay, so 20 days before Ramadan, it was made obligation. Meaning that the Prophet ﷺ on the first year when he migrated to Medina, he did not fast. It was not made obligation at that time. So the Prophet ﷺ fasted only 9 Ramadans. He did not fast more. However, leaves fasting, rejecting its obligation, then he will be taken into custody for 3 days to fast. That's the ruling of whoever does not actually fast. Of course, fasting, whoever rejects it as a fact, he exits Islam. So whoever says, no, I don't believe fasting is from Islam because it's a pillar, he will exit Islam. So the scholars mentioned about what to do with someone who is not fasting. Well, if he is rejecting to fast, then he will be taken to custody for 3 days and he will be asked to fast. If he does not, then the capital punishment according to Islam is actually what is applied on him if there is an Islamic authority to apply these punishments. The scholar said unless he is a new Muslim. If he is a new Muslim, then he needs to be given some time in order to adjust himself to be able to fast and live with all the obligations of Islam. There are types of fasting. The first type of fasting is the obligation type of fasting, which is Ramadan, Kaffarah, and Nadr. These 3 types of fasting are obligation. And we will speak about them. The second type of fasting is the prohibited fasting, which is the fasting of the woman optional without the permission of her husband, unless he is away or in the state of ihram or i'tikaf. So that's a prohibited fasting. So a woman wants to fast, should ask the permission from her husband before, if he has any desire, or if he is traveling or in an i'tikaf or going for hajj, then she can fast without his permission. Fasting the suspicion day, which is the 1 day before Ramadan, where people start quarreling or arguing whether it's Ramadan next day or the day after. Fasting that day is prohibited. The day of Eid al-Fitr and the day of Eid al-Adha, it's prohibited to fast these days. And the days of Tashriq, which is the 3 days of Eid al-Adha, they are prohibited as well. Fasting of the woman during menses is as well prohibited. Fasting of whoever fears on his life, if fasting is prohibited. So someone, the doctor said to him, if you fast, for example, he's on medicine. He said to him, if you fast and you don't take your medicine, you might actually have a health problem. Then it's prohibited for him to fast. So he needs to take the medicine. Then we have the third time, which is the Makrouh fasting, which is the fasting of the life. So to fast the whole life. Of course, there are differences in opinion in this. Imam Malik said it is allowed to fast the whole life, but the majority of scholars, they said it is makruh actually to fast the whole life. Fasting only Friday, and from where did they get that fasting the whole life is prohibited? The 3 people that came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said to him that I fast, I don't break my fast, I make qiyamul layl, I don't stop, and the other one who was saying I don't marry women. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I fast, I break, I marry women, and I do Qiyam al-Layl and sleep, however, turn away from my Sunnah, he's not out of me. That's why they said it's makruh to fast continuously for the whole life. Fasting Friday only, for no reason, it is makruh. The Prophet ﷺ came to Aisha and she was fasting on Friday, and he said to her, "Did you fast Thursday?" She said, "No." He said, "Then fast a day after." If it's an optional, just a general optional, then you cannot fast. It's makruh to fast Friday alone and Saturday alone. But if there is a reason behind that fasting, like for example, Friday came on Arafat or Saturday came on Arafat, then there is a reason. It's not a general optional fasting that we are fasting. Fasting 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, Imam Shafi'i said it's haram because the Prophet ﷺ in an authentic hadith said if Ramadan comes, leave 1 or 2 days before it, do not fast. So it's supposed to be a preparation for Ramadan. So we should not, it's makruh to fast before Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not separate Friday night with Qiyam without the days, and do not separate it with fasting. So do not specify only Friday for Qiyamul Layl and for fasting alone. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not separate Saturday with fasting except with what was obligated on you, and if one of you didn't find except a 3 leaf, then let him chew it. So meaning that it should not be meant to fast a natural or general optional fasting on Saturday. Prophet ﷺ said, be aware of continuous fasting, so it's makruh to do continuous fasting the whole life or 2 days in a row without breaking the fast between them. The next one is the mustahab, which is number 4. Fasting every second day is the best fasting. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that the best fasting is the fasting of Dawood alayhi salam. He used to fast 1 day and to stop 1 day. Fasting 3 days from each month, which is the white days, which is the 13, 14, 15 from each Hijri month. Fasting Mondays and Fridays and Thursdays, the Prophet ﷺ said the deeds are shown on these days. I prefer for my deeds to be shown while I'm fasting. Fasting 6 days of Shawwal, which is after Ramadan, as the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever fasts Ramadan and follow it by 6 days of Shawwal as if he fasted the whole life. Fasting the day of Arafah, the Prophet ﷺ said it will be wiping the sins of 1 year before and 1 year after. Fasting 8 days of Dhul Hijjah, which is the days of the before Arafat. The Prophet ﷺ in an authentic hadith did not leave fasting these days. 9 and 10 of Muharram, which is Tasu'a and Ashura, the Prophet ﷺ said for the Ashura to be wiping the sins of 1 year. The sacred months, which are the 4 months, which are the sacred months? Do you remember the sacred months? Or Al-Ashhur al-Hurum? Who knows the 4 sacred months? Rajab, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram. These are the 4 sacred months, and 3 of them in a row, which is Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram. These are in a row, and then Rajab is independent, alone. So in these months, it is mustahab actually to fast more in these months. The Prophet ﷺ said the most excellent fast after Ramadan is God's months al-Muharram, which are these 4 months. And the most excellent prayer after what is prescribed is prayer during the night. Fasting Sha'ban, the Prophet ﷺ used to fast it till one would say that he would never stop fasting, and he would abandon fasting till one would say that he would never fast. I never saw Allah's apostle fasting from a whole month, for a whole month, except the month of Ramadan, and did not see him fasting in any month more than the month of Sha'ban. So the Prophet ﷺ used to fast in Sha'ban most the time. So these are the mustahab fasting during the year. Abdullah ibn Umar narrated, Allah's Apostle was informed ﷺ, that I had taken an oath to fast daily. So Abdullah ibn Umar took an oath to fast daily and to pray every night, all the night throughout my life. So the Prophet ﷺ came to me and asked whether it was correct. So look at this, the Prophet ﷺ first he checked. He heard about it, he did not take action straight away, he first checked. So I replied, let my parents be sacrificed for you. I said so. The Prophet ﷺ said, you cannot do that. So fast for a few days and give it up for a few days. Pray and sleep. Fast 3 days a month, as the reward of good deeds is multiplied 10 times, and that will be equal to 1 year of fasting. I replied, I can do better than that. The Prophet ﷺ said to me, fast 1 day and give up fasting for a day, and that is the fasting of Prophet Dawood, and that is the best fasting. I said, I have the power to fast better, more than that. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is no better fasting than that. So the maximum fasting that one can fast is actually fast 1 day and break 1 day. Some ruling, it's obligation to continue any sunnah fasting if the person started it. Is it obligation to continue? For example, if I started fasting Monday, out of just option, sunnah, mustahab, is it an obligation for me to actually continue fasting, or I can decide to stop fasting? I can decide to break my fast on that day. Whoever starts an optional worship except for Hajj and Umrah, such as fast, i'tikaf, optional prayer, tawaf, wudu, reading Surah Al-Kahf, tasbih after the prayer, then it's not obligation to finish them because it's an optional worship. So he can stop it at any time. And no makeup needed and no blame. But better to complete the worship, as Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَلَا تُبْطِلُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ, and do not invalidate your good deeds. The optional fasting person is Amir of himself. If he wishes, he continue, and if he wishes, he does not. And this is an authentic hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. So meaning that if someone is fasting an optional, he has the say to actually stop or break his fast. When is fasting obligation? First, nadr. Nadr, does anyone know what's nadr? It's like I say, if Allah gives me a son, I will fast 1 full month in a row. That's called nadr. So it's if clause. If this happens to me, or for example, something good happened to you and said, as being thankful to Allah, I will fast 10 days. So that's nadr. So you made an obligation on yourself. At that stage, that becomes an obligation. So that's the nadr or the oath. Kaffarah. The kaffarah is for a sin, which is to cover up a sin that happened, a mistake of killing, and not fulfilling the oath, and breaking the fast of Ramadan by intercourse and dhihar. These are the 4 sins that there is a kaffarah for them. What we will speak about, because it's related to fasting, which is the intercourse during the month of Ramadan. The others are outside the context of the fasting, which is mistake killing. So someone killed someone by mistake, his not intention, not fulfilling the oath. So someone said, I swear by Allah I will do this, and he did not do it. He needs to have a kaffarah. And the dhihar, someone came to his wife and said to her, you are like my mother. So he does not touch her because this is called dhihar. There is a kaffarah for that. But what we will speak about is only the intercourse part. So, nadr, kaffarah, and witnessing part of Ramadan. So someone, for example, took shahada during the month of Ramadan. So he witnessed Ramadan as a Muslim. So witnessing even a part of Ramadan makes it obligation on him. So anyone who witnesses any part of Ramadan, it's an obligation for him. By seeing the moon, if the sky is clear, or by continuing Sha'ban 30 days, if it is cloudy. Narrated Ibn Umar, I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, when you see the crescent of the month of Ramadan, start fasting, and when you see the crescent of the month of Shawwal, stop fasting. And if the sky is overcast and you can't see it, then regard the crescent month of Ramadan as of 30 days. All of these problems that happen nowadays of whether the month is 30 days or 29 days and the moon sighting, and whether it's tomorrow Ramadan or the day after and people divide, all of these are actually problems related to a couple of factors. Number one of the factors, which is speaking about the witnessing the moon. So to see the moon, the new moon. So some scholars say to see the new moon by naked eye. Some say you can see the moon by the telescope, CCTV. So they differed on this. Then they thought about the other part, which is calculations, using calculations. Some said, no, you cannot use calculations. You should use only the witnessing the new moon. Some said, no, you can use the calculations. Based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we are an illiterate nation. We don't know calculations. So fast for seeing it and break your fast for seeing it. So those types of people said, if this is the case, then the Prophet ﷺ made a clue that we are illiterate. So at that time, we did not know how to use the calculations, but nowadays we know how to use the calculations. So why not using the calculations? That's why the Ummah as well broke apart into opinions whether to use the calculations or not. Even those who use the calculations, they started dividing. What calculations do we use? Do we use the calculations of the new moon, the born of the new moon, or we use the calculations of being able to view the moon? And that's why nowadays you hear a lot something called moon visibility maps. So you have a map, and how is the visibility of the moon on the earth, and it will say to you, this country will see it by naked eye, this country will see it by telescope, and then based on that they will start actually building their judgment when is the moon or when is the beginning of the month. In Australia, the Australian National Imam Council, they take the moon visibility map as their base for starting the months and ending the months. So that's what actually all Australia now are following in this regard. So all of these are, and the other part as well of it, whether if the moon was sighted in the country, all the countries should fast or one country only should fast. All of these are valid arguments, and we will discuss some of them inshallah in details today, but it's not supposed to be something that will cause some hatred and disagreement and argument between the Muslims, because all of these are things that are based on some solid evidence. Some ruling. The start of Ramadan can be conferred by witnessing of one Muslim. Just one Muslim. So, he needs to be a just person, so someone who is known that he is a just person. He reached puberty, sane, free, male or female. Okay? A Bedouin came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, I saw the moon of Ramadan. He said to him, do you testify that there is no God but Allah? He said, yes. He said, do you testify that Muhammad is his messenger? He said, yes. The Prophet ﷺ ordered Bilal to call tomorrow Ramadan. Ibn Umar saw the moon and told the Prophet ﷺ, he fasted and ordered people to fast. So only one person came, and actually the Prophet ﷺ confirmed the beginning of Ramadan by one person witnessing. So for Ramadan, one will be sufficient to witness, but for Shawwal, the exiting, it needs two, and one is not enough. Breaking the fast is not confirmed except with two witnesses. What about the difference between the countries? The difference between the countries, whether it has, if the moon has been sighted in one country, does it require all the Muslims around the world to fast, or it's only this country, or the longitude, the countries above or below, or the latitude, and so on? Well, the majority of the scholars came to the verse of the the verse of the Quran that says, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. Whoever witnesses the month, let him fast. Okay? And the Prophet ﷺ said, صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. Sumu is plural. You all fast. لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. For it once. That's why the scholars said, if this is the case, this is an order for all Muslims for 1 month, for one moon. So meaning that, according to the hadith and according to the verse, because the verse is general as well, then meaning that if a country sees the moon, the whole world should actually fast together, as if the difference between the eastern part and the western part will make it as all of them will share part of the night together. So because if they are sharing part of the night, then they should fast together. And currently all the fatwas, they refer to that, and they show that actually this is even better for the unity of the ummah, that if one country witnesses the moon, the whole world should fast on that day. And this is the applied nowadays, except for some countries. The other are referring to one hadith, which is a hadith of Salama, when one of the companions went to Syria and he witnessed the beginning of Ramadan there, and then he came back, and when he came back he discovered that they were fasting in a day different than the day they were fasting there. And so that companion asked the companion, when did you fast? He said, we fasted on Saturday. He said, we fasted on Friday, or in a different day. So the companion replied to him that this is how we were ordered actually to apply the fasting, so when we see it. So that hadith had lots of argument between the scholars. Did the companion say this is what we ordered? Did we are ordered actually to fast based on our own view, or based on the general view? So that's why that hadith can be used for many arguments or many claims in regards to the fasting. That's why the scholars said we cannot use that hadith at all to claim that we should fast based on the region or so on. So in general, we go with the majority of the scholars that fasting for all countries, for unity and according to the evidence. Conditions for fasting to be obligation. For someone, fasting for him to be an obligation, there are conditions. Number one, for Islam. So the person needs to be a Muslim. Does that mean that the disbeliever, if he fasts, it's going to be accepted from him? According to this, no. So if a non-Muslim fasts during Ramadan, it's not going to be accepted. Although he's going to be, as the majority of the scholars said, he's going to be questioned in the Day of Judgment about being a Muslim, and he's going to be questioned about not performing the obligations of Islam. So he will be punished for two, for not being Muslim, and the punishment will increase for not performing the obligations of the Muslim, for example, salah, fasting, and so on. Number two is puberty, and same. So anyone below puberty is not ordered to fast. But it's better to, as the prayer happens, that we teach our kids to fast at the age of 7, and then we order them, really discipline them at the age of 10 to fast like the prayer. Same, meaning that he did not lose his mind, and the Prophet ﷺ said, pen was raised from 3, the kid until he reaches puberty, the sleeping until wake up, the insane until he has back his brain. Unconsciousness does not require repeating of fast. So someone fall unconscious for the whole of month of Ramadan. He is not required to repeat the month of Ramadan. Why? Because according to the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, the pen was raised, meaning that the accountability was raised. He's not going to be held accountable for the insane until he has back his brain. So the one who is unconscious he lost all his control. He's not accountable anymore. That's why the scholars they said If he is not accountable, why do you want him to fast again what he missed? Other reasons, like, for example, drunk or short unconsciousness, someone fell unconscious for 10 minutes, for half an hour, that's something that needs makeup, and there is no difference between the scholars about that. Number 3 from the conditions is the ability. So he has the health and he's not sick. So he's able actually to fast. And not traveling. So if he is traveling, he's an excused person. So he can have the excuse not to fast. It's not obligation for sick elders or women in menses or traveling long distance to fast. So he can fast, the traveling long distance, women in menses or in nafas, they cannot fast, and sick elders, they cannot fast unless the doctor says that they can fast. If the doctor said they cannot fast because of the medicine, they need to take the medicine, they cannot fast. Conditions for fasting to be correct. Now the previous ones, conditions for fasting to be an obligation. Now condition for fasting to be correct. Number 1, Islam, as we said. Number 2, sane. Number 3, clean from menses and nafas all day. So part day will not allow. So if the woman actually was part day clean from menses, then that does not make the fasting correct. Days that are allowed for the person to fast, meaning that he's not coming to fast on the day of Eid. So these are the conditions for the fasting of the person to be correct. So if he's a Muslim, sane, if she is a woman and she's clean from menses, and they are not fasting on a day of Eid or a day that is haram, then the fasting is correct. It is not required to be free from janaba to fast Ramadan or other than that. So if a person had intercourse in the night and then he woke up at Fajr time after the adhan, but he wants to pray Fajr, but he is in the state of janaba, he can still fast. That's not breaking his fast. As the authentic hadith narrated by Aisha and Salama, at times Prophet ﷺ used to get up in the morning in the state of janaba after having sexual relations with his wives. He would then take a bath and fast. So it's not going to be breaking the fast to wake up in the state of janaba. He can fast, but it's better, of course, to take shower before. Intention is required by all scholars, but some considered it as pillar and some as condition. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever doesn't have the intention for fasting before Fajr, then his fasting is invalid. So when is the time of the intention for fasting? It's before Fajr. So everyone before Fajr needs to have the intention. Conditions of the intention. It needs to be at night. So it needs to be the previous night. Number 2, specifying the intention in the obligation fasting. So it's not to wake up that, okay, I want to fast tomorrow. What do you want to fast? Just normal fast? You can. But waking up after the Fajr and then say, oh, I decided I had one day missed from last Ramadan, I will make this day that day. You cannot. You have to have the intention before Fajr for an obligation. If it's a Sunnah fasting, you can. But if an obligation, it has to have the intention, which is a specific intention for what you want to fast before Fajr. Be emphasized, not saying, if tomorrow is Ramadan, I will fast. If tomorrow is not Ramadan, I will not fast. That's unacceptable. Even if tomorrow was Ramadan, his fasting is invalid because his intention was mixed. It's not actually emphasized. Repeating the intention for each day. You cannot say, I intended to fast the whole month of Ramadan. It needs to be daily because every day is treated on a separate, on its own. That's why it's supposed to be daily. Imam Ahmad said, and this is a good quotation from him, whoever thought tomorrow I will be fasting will be enough for his intention. Whoever said I will wake up for sahur will be enough for his intention. So any intention that is relating to things for the next day's fasting like sahur, qiyamul layl, I will wake up for qiyamul layl, I will, guys, we are sleeping early because we want to wake up for sahur, even if you did not wake up for sahur. Already the intention is there and the thoughts are there for fasting the next day. Some sunnahs, sahur, even if a water sip, and best at the end of the time, so before Fajr. Narrated by Anas ibn Malik, the Prophet ﷺ said, take sahur as there is a blessing in it. Anas related that the Prophet ﷺ said, take the sahur meal for there is a blessing in it. So it's a blessing to take the sahur. And this is sunnah. Speed the breaking of the fast, so the moment the adhan comes, don't wait, just break the fast straight away. Salman ibn Amr Dahabi related that the Prophet ﷺ said, break your fast with dates or else with water, or it is pure. So the best to break the fasting is with dates or with water. Sunnah is dua after breaking the fast. We all know the dua, Allahumma laka sumtu ala rizqika aftart, and so on. Breaking the fast of others, even on dates. So you are, for example, breaking your fast, grab a date and give it to someone to break the fast on that date. As the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever breaks the fast of his brother, he will take his reward without reducing the reward of the fasting person. Ghusl of the janaba before Fajr. So if someone is on the state of janaba, to have ghusl before Fajr. Stopping any talk that is not beneficial. It's sunnah, just talking about cars, talking about soccer, it's not beneficial during Ramadan. It's sunnah to abstain from that. Leaving the halal pleasures that don't break the fast, such as listening to nasheed, watching, for example, YouTube videos or whatever that are halal. But during Ramadan, it's better to stay away from them. Extending the generosity to family and visiting ties, connecting our members of the family and relatives, getting oneself busy with knowledge, Quran, and remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal, and doing i'tikaf. All of these are sunnahs of fasting. What are things that are makrouh for fasting? Continuous fasting, which is to fast 2 days in a row, without breaking in between. Makrouh for majority, and haram according to Imam Shafi'i. Kiss or anything that might lead to intercourse during fasting is makrouh, because it's not going to invalidate the fasting unless there is intercourse. Luxury acts like putting perfume and taking shower without a reason, that's actually makrouh for fasting. Tasting the food. For women while they are cooking, tasting the food is makrouh for them. Although they are not swallowing it, but it's makrouh. Chewing gum, it's makrouh. It's not haram.
Chewing gum.
Yeah, you can eat chewing gum.
That's flavors.
Not the synthetic one. Not the chewing gum that is sold actually in the supermarket. Which chewing gum that we can eat during the month of Ramadan? Does anyone know? The gum from the tree. Excellent. Which is actually tasteless, and nothing will be actually going out from that gum. So all the scholars, they said there is no issues with that chewing gum. But actually it's useless. It's used sometimes to clean the teeth, but it's not haram during Ramadan. But it will not be suitable to see someone fasting Ramadan and doing, what sort of fasting is this? So it's not actually relevant for the month of Ramadan to use that chewing gum, although it's not haram and it will not break the fast. Not the chewing gum that the extra and the whatever that we see it in the supermarket. These are, of course, they have all of these flavorings and sugar, they are haram. But the natural, the tree chewing gum. Brushing the teeth, it's makruh if I am going to first, unless I'm going to guarantee that no actually toothpaste is going to go. I'm not going to swallow anything. That's number one. Number two, it's makruh to have it after dhuhr. Why is that? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, the smell of the mouth of the fasting person is better at the sight of Allah than the smell of the musk. Why is that? So the scholar said, then to remove that is makruh. To remove that smell is makruh, because Allah Azza wa Jal loves that smell. That's why they said, if this is the case, then it's makruh to brush or to use siwak after dhuhr time, because that's when that smell starts coming. It's coming from the empty stomach. Extending washing of the mouth during wudu, so doing madmada and you are extending, you are doing, what do you call it, gaggles. That's extending is not allowed, because this is, or it's makruh, because this might break the wudu. Excuses for not fasting. What excuses can I have and so I do not fast? Number one, travel. Allah Azza wa Jal said in the Quran, فإن كنتم جنبا أو على فإن كنتم مرضى أو على سفر. So if you were sick or traveling, so it's an excuse for us not to fast. The travel that allows the combining and shortening is the travel that allows the breaking of the fast. So if I'm traveling over 89 kilometers, then I can actually break my fast. It needs to be a halal travel, and it needs to be before Fajr. So I started traveling before Fajr. But if I am in the city and then my flight is at 10 a.m., so I started my day with fasting, and then I went to my flight, then I cannot break my fast because I already started my day. It needs to be with intention to actually not fast. If initiated travel then decided to break, then allowed. Someone, for example, started traveling on his flight going to Melbourne, and he said, no, it's just Melbourne, it's 1 hour, I'm going to fast. And then at some stage during that day, he actually felt that he is in hardship and he's tired and he needs to run around in Melbourne and go here and go there. He can actually break his fast because he has the excuse. And the Prophet ﷺ actually did that in conquering Mecca. In his travel towards Mecca, it was during Ramadan, and the Prophet ﷺ broke his fast. And he said to people, break your fast. And people did not break their fast. And he came back to the Prophet, to his wife, and he said, the people are going to be doomed. She said, why? He said, I said to them, break your fast, and they did not listen to me. She said to him, go grab a glass of water, go drink that glass of water in front of them. So he went there and drank the glass of water, and they saw him, and then they broke their fast. And that was during Ramadan. He decided to break the fast after traveling, when he saw the effect of fasting and traveling on the people. That's when actually people say, look how the Prophet ﷺ took advice from a woman to advise on the matters of the country. If a person chose not to fast, so he had the intention, I'm traveling, I will not fast. And then said, oh, I had to make up one day. I will make up that one day on that traveling day. He cannot, because that's a day of Ramadan. So he cannot make up something or fast other than Ramadan. So that's the first excuse, which is traveling. The second is sickness. As Allah Azza wa Jal said, فَإِن كُنْتُم مَرْضَى, if you were sick. So sickness that might affect life, or making fasting hard, or increase the sickness, or delay cure. So these are the criteria, what sort of sickness that can be an excuse not to fast. Sickness that will affect life. So there's a threat, life threat, then that you cannot fast. Or making fasting, it's hard to the person to fast actually. Or increase the sickness. So he is sick. If he fasts, his sickness will increase. That's an excuse. Or the cure will be delayed. So if he fasts, he should have been cured in 1 day. If he fasts, he will be cured in 3 days. Then he actually has an excuse. He can not fast. Don't forget to write your questions on the website if you have. A fighter can actually break his fast. So someone in the state of jihad can break his fast. Kaffarah is required for each year for fasting. So if someone is sick and cannot fast, and as we are going to speak about the kaffarah, if he cannot fast at all, then he is to pay the kaffarah, and we are going to speak about that in detail. If next Ramadan come without makeup, then nothing but makeup. Someone, for example, has been sick for 1 full year. So Ramadan came, he was not able to fast, and then 1 full year was not able to fast, and next Ramadan came, was not able to fast. He just needs to make up all the days he missed. No kaffarah is needed. If someone passed away without making up the missing days, what happens to him? Well, the Prophet ﷺ, in an authentic hadith, once a companion came to him and asked him, my mom or one of my relatives passed away and they did not finish what is required from Ramadan. They missed some days. Shall I fast on their behalf? He said, if they have a debt, would you pay it? He said, yes. He said, the debt of Allah Azza wa Jal is most worthy of paying off. So that's why the scholar said, if someone passed away and you are a relative of him, so what you can do is you can make up on his behalf. Pregnancy and breastfeeding is an excuse. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah put from the traveler fasting and part of the prayer, and from the pregnant and breastfeeding the fasting. So, and we are going to speak about what is required after breaking the fast or missing these days. Eldership, someone is too old, can't fast, he needs to pay fidyah. If someone is forced to eat, he can eat. He doesn't need to fast. Some opinions from some scholars. So in total, the excuses for not fasting is travel, sickness, pregnancy, breastfeeding, eldership, and force. These are the 5 excuses for someone not to fast. And each one has its own explanation and details. Some opinions say that the hard work can be an excuse. They said, for example, some people who are working long hours, like in the mining, for example. Mining is really long hours and very physical, heavy work. They said this person needs actually to eat a strong sahur, really heavy sahur, and then start working. If at some stages he felt that he is going to go unconscious, he is not going to be able to continue fasting, he might be affected, his life is going to be under threat, then he can break his fast. Especially if he needs severely the work and he cannot afford stopping work. If he can afford, then that's the way. If he cannot and he needs work, he needs the income, and then the work is like this, then some of the scholars said he can actually break his fast and make up in different day. Someone is drowning in a sea and you are fasting, or in a swimming pool and you are fasting. If you jump behind him, you will break your fast, definitely, because the water will enter. What to do? Jump behind him and then save the soul, even if you break your fast. If an optional fasting and you invited guests or guests invited you to food, then you have the option to break your fast if it is an optional fasting. Now, what invalidates the prayer? What invalidates the prayer, the scholars divided it into 2 types. What invalidates the prayer, the fasting, that requires makeup only. So, meaning that if my fasting was invalidated because of these reasons, I just need to make up. I don't need to pay kaffarah. So what are these? Number 1, entering any physical object to the inside, even a seed of sesame, from an open exit of the body, like the mouth or nose or ear or front or back private parts, or a wound deliberately. Each word of this definition counts. So when we say entering, we are not speaking exiting. Physical objects, so something that you can actually touch, it's physical. To the inside of the body. Even a seed of sesame, so it's even if small, from an open exit, so the body has exits. So if it's entering from one of these exits, like the mouth or the nose or the ear or front or back private parts, or a wound, deliberately. So if someone deliberately entered something to his body, then that will break the fast. If something entered the body by mistake, it doesn't invalidate the fasting. Asthma buffer invalidates the fasting, and the person should not use the asthma buffer. Is it how we write the buffer? P, sorry. So it's PUFFR. So asthma buffer invalidates the fasting. We cannot fast if we need to use it. If something comes out from the mouth, then returned back, it will invalidate. So someone, for example, had a reflux, and the reflux came back to the mouth, and he swallowed it again. That invalidates the fasting. So anything that comes out from the mouth should not come back again. Own saliva doesn't invalidate. So someone swallowed his own saliva, it does not invalidate. Food left over between the teeth, he brushed his teeth, he did not actually recognize that there are some food, and out of a sudden he felt something entered his throat without his intention, that does not invalidate. But if he was, for example, walking and then he felt something went into his mouth and he felt it, so he has the option to take it out. For example, a sesame seed or something small, so he needs to take it out. If he deliberately swallowed it, that invalidates, even if it's small. Anything that is outside our ability to control, that does not invalidate. But if it does inside our ability, that will invalidate. Smoking, of course, invalidates. There is some people using during Ramadan straps of nicotine. Those who smoke, they put straps of nicotine on their hand or arm in order to reduce the amount of addiction to smoking. Of course, the skin is not a normal entrance of the body. As we said, there are normal entrances. The skin is not one of them. So you can have that, and it will not invalidate the fasting. Of course, one of the things that usually people ask about is the injection, whether the injection invalidates the body, the fasting or not. And the scholar said if it is a medical injection in the muscle, it does not invalidate. If it is like glucose or something in the blood, it invalidates, because the body will benefit from that. Mucus. So mucus is different than the saliva. If actually the mucus, because the mucus can be actually taken out from the throat. If the person intentionally swallowed his mucus, which is coming, usually they say it comes from the upper part of the head. It goes down to the throat and accumulates somewhere, and the person can take it out. So if the mucus actually can be taken out, and the person did not take it out but swallowed it intentionally, then that can invalidate the fasting. Swallow water during wudu. So someone was making wudu, and he, as we said, do not extend the wudu, do not extend the washing of the mouth during wudu, during Ramadan. He extended it and he swallowed. He needs to repeat. That's something invalidates his fasting. Intentional vomiting invalidates fasting. So someone vomited intentionally, but by mistake or out of his control, it should not. Why is that? The majority, they say, because usually if someone vomits, he will swallow back some of his vomits. So that means that he swallowed something that came out of him. Masturbation invalidates. Discover mistake in start or end of fasting. If adhan came while food in the mouth, okay. So meaning that if someone woke up and he looked outside, he said, oh, it's still adhan fajr not there. So he started eating sahur. and then discover that it's already adhan. What does he do? This is a mistake that he did. Does he continue? He needs to continue, of course. He needs to abstain from eating or drinking. But he needs to make up that day because that invalidated his fasting. Why? Because he did not put the effort to know whether the fasting or the adhan came or not. He just opened his eyes and started actually eating. If the adhan came while food in the mouth, what should I do? Of course, I need to take the food out of the mouth, because the moment the adhan comes, that's the moment that the fajr starts, it should be taken out from the mouth. If someone loses minds, menses, feel unconscious, nafas, all of these invalidate the fasting, and they don't require anything apart from making up. So the person needs to make up. And by the way, someone broke his fast intentionally. So it's a sin, major sin. He doesn't need to make anything apart from making up. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever breaks his fasting intentionally, it will not be sufficient for him to fast the whole life, even if he fasted the whole life. That's why the scholars, they said, whoever breaks his fasting during Ramadan with intention, sinning, the only thing that he can do is just fast one day as a makeup. That's all. He doesn't need to do anything else. Why? Because no matter what he does, he cannot make up that day. So he needs to actually do lots of repentance. Now, the second one is the one that requires makeup and kaffarah. It's only one from the ones that require makeup and kaffarah, which is the intercourse during the day of Ramadan. So if someone had intercourse with his wife during the day of Ramadan, he needs to make up and do the kaffarah. So, Abdullah, can you just stop the outside? There are conditions. There are conditions for the intercourse to be considered and for the kaffarah to be considered. Number one, someone had intention to fast the night before, a fard, which is during Ramadan, and started fasting and then had the intercourse during the day of Ramadan. Number two, he's knowing by his choice and deliberate. So meaning that he has the knowledge that it's haram. It's not a new Muslim that did not know about it. Okay? And chose to do that deliberately. So he's not a new Muslim. During the month of Ramadan only. So if one had an intercourse with his wife during an obligation fasting outside Ramadan, does not require kaffarah. Okay? By intercourse only, no kaffarah for eating. So someone ate, does not have, so someone ate, for example, and then had intercourse, it does not count. To be sinning, not traveling or sick. So someone, for example, traveling, and he chose not to fast during Ramadan, and he had intercourse during the day of Ramadan. There is no harm on him because that's part of the excuse that he's sick, he's not fasting on that day during the day of Ramadan, and he had intercourse. Of course, both need to be not fasting. Knowing validity of his fasting, so he knows that his fasting is valid, 100%. No kaffarah for whoever had intercourse after forgetting and eating during Ramadan, thinking he invalidated his fasting. So someone, for example, he's new, he doesn't have knowledge. And then he forgot and ate. He thought, oh, I broke my fasting. Of course, whoever forgets does not break his fasting. But he is new on Islam. He did not know about it. So after that he said, so if I broke my fast, then I will have intercourse. He had intercourse on the day of Ramadan, thinking that his fasting was invalid. That person does not require to have kaffarah because he lacked knowledge. in that part because of him new on Islam. Not mistaking the time, so someone is mistaking the time, like what we spoke about. Someone woke up, thought it's still night, had intercourse, appeared that it's Fajr time already before. So that's mistaking the time. That person who had that mistake will not be required the Kaffarah. To be the initiator of the intercourse, so he is the one who initiated that with his wife, or the wife with the man, to have at least the head of the penis entered, to be in a private part, to be the action does not, the action doer not being done on. So the person who does it, not the person who is being done on him, unless they both are actually confirming that or accepting that knowingly and choosing that, then they have to have the Kaffarah together. What doesn't invalidate fasting? Entering of something to the body by forgetting or by force or acceptable ignorance. Food not recognized between the teeth. What can't avoid, like the dust or fly. You are walking and you opened your mouth and suddenly a fly entered the mouth or dust entered the mouth. These are objects entering the body. It's not counted. So you don't need to count on it. Hijama can be, and it does not invalidate. Eyeliner, the Prophet ﷺ used to put eyeliner during the month of Ramadan. Kiss or hug, it's makrouh. As we said, it's from the makrouh things, so long as it does not lead to the intercourse. Ejaculated from thinking or looking, this does not invalidate the fasting. Chewing natural gum, as we said, this does not invalidate. Tasting food does not invalidate, but we said that it's makrouh to do that. Teeth brush or siwak, it's makrouh, but it does not invalidate. Make up the fasting. Make up the fasting, it's obligation to make up, whether we broke the fast with or without excuse. So if there is an excuse or there is no excuse, we have to make up the fasting. The time, when do we have the time? It's until next Ramadan, so it's an open 11 months to make up whatever is missed. Fasting of the person on the dead and paying Kaffarah. This is, as we said, if your relative passed away and he missed some days, you can fast on his behalf. Kaffarah. The Kaffarah is only for breaking the fasting of Ramadan by intercourse. Narrating Al-Bukhari and Muslim by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, O Messenger of Allah, I'm doomed. He said, why is that? He said, I had intercourse with my wife when I was fasting. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, do you have a slave whom you can set free? He said, no. So first is slave. He said, can you fast for 2 consecutive months? He said, no. He said, can you afford to feed 60 poor persons? He said, no. Then a man from among the Ansar brought a basket of dates. He said, take this and give it in charity. The man said, to someone poorer than us? So he's the poorest person in the city. O Messenger of Allah, by the one who sent you with the truth, there is no family between the 2 lavas fields in Medina poorer than us. The Prophet ﷺ said, go and feed it to your family. So this is the sequence of someone who had intercourse during the month of Ramadan. So first, free a slave. It's not available nowadays. We don't have slaves to free. Then second is fasting 2 months in a row without Eid day in between. So no Eid in between. It has to be 2 full months, 60 days. If the person is physically not able and not fit to fast these 60 days or 2 months, then he can feed 60 needy people for each day, needy people. And the order is required, meaning that the person needs to first fast 2 months. If he cannot afford, then he go. If he broke his fast on the last 959 day, he needs to start again from scratch. So these 60 days or 2 months need to be fully. Then we have a fidyah. A fidyah which is a meal for the normal people. Like nowadays, normally, if you are speaking about Adelaide, what's the normal amount for a meal in Adelaide? $10? $10? So that's a fidyah for feeding a person. What are the reasons for the fidyah? Elders who reached an age they cannot actually fast, so they can pay one meal per 1 day. So if Ramadan was 30 days, they need to pay for 30 days to feed people. Sick without hope of cure, someone is sick, too sick, cancer, no hope to be cured, pay fidyah straight away. Pregnant or breastfeeding, if fear on baby. There are two types here. Someone is pregnant or breastfeeding and she is fearing on her own life, that her life is under danger now. Then she can break her fast and she only needs to make up. But if her fear is on the baby's life, then she needs to make up and pay the fidyah. Okay? So that's the difference. If the danger is on the baby, because it's not her own life, there's no danger on her own life, because the person is required to fulfill the necessities, which is to protect the life. If the life is under danger, then she can break the fast and only make up, no fidyah. However, they didn't make up before next Ramadan. So someone had, for example, a woman had menses. She had 7 days and the year fully passed away, and then came the next year and next Ramadan came and she did not make up the days. And she wants what to do with these days. Shall we do? The majority of the scholars, they said, after Ramadan, she fasts and it's better to pay a fidyah on each day on top of the fasting. So she still needs to fast, but she pays fidyah, which is feeding one on top of the fasting. So this is a crash course about fasting. So these are all the rulings of fasting, and if there is any question, I hope.
But there's some doctors say, Muslim doctors, they say it's okay to use the buffer.
No way. Nobody on the earth from the scholars accepted to use the buffer for the fasting person. He doesn't need to fast. Allah gave him the excuse. The person is sick. Why do we need to force him to fast? Do you understand the concept? Like someone wants to go to Hajj. He took a debt of $20,000 to go to Hajj. Why? Allah did not make it an obligation on you unless you have the money. Someone wants to fast and Allah did not make obligation on him. Okay, Allah did not make obligation on you. Why do you still want to fast if it's not obligation? So we need to take that. What's does anyone? My.c box. Anyone has questions? Did anyone write any question? Yeah, we have 2 questions here. And if anyone has, can you make 2 intentions for one fast? Example, fast Sunnah and pay back fast. No, this cannot. Some scholars recently spoke about one thing, which is the matter of fasting Shawwal plus making up. But it's preferable to make Shawwal first, or to fast Shawwal, 6 days of Shawwal, and then you can make up. Gargling during wudu with traces of water in the mouth and it got swallowed, does it invalidate the fast? It should not be swallowed. If it was swallowed by mistake and you realized that after, for example, you spit out and you made the effort to make sure that your mouth is empty, and then you realize that there was something, that's a mistake because you put the effort already. But if you did not, you gurgled knowing that there is still more water there and you swallowed that water, yes, that invalidates the fasting, and the person should make up that day. All right? Any question? Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.